The reason I went to school was essentially to fill in the gaps in my learning that I couldn't fill on YouTube,
Okay,
and also networking. The thing about
gotcha.
going to a film school is you have a built-in community of filmmakers, so it's great in that respect. But at the same time, you are in the most saturated market as a
Yeah.
filmmaker.
Hello, welcome back to Lunch Break. I am your host, JP Pressley. And first things first, just want to say, yes, this is a monocle. No, it's not a prop. Yes, it is prescription. And yes, I'm still getting the hang of it. So however many times it falls out of my eye, please ignore that. Forgive me. Bear with me. I'm trying to get the hang of it still. Still need more practice. All that being said, I'm so happy and honored to have as our illustrious guest today, the co-founder of Cursive Films, just a filmmaker extraordinaire, my former college roommate, Mr. Jonathan Rothermel. So thank you for being on the show, Jonathan.
Oh, of course.
Uh, and then, yeah, so when I first met you in college, like you were there when I got there, I think you were a sophomore. Um, and you were introduced to me like as the filmmaker, like as people go to, like you're that guy. So just kind of curious though, like
Hmm.
before all this, like at the beginning, how did you get your start in film?
How did I get my start in film?
Yep,
Well, it's kind of a long story. Do you want me to tell you the full version or the short version?
we got time. Go for the full version.
Okay. Full version. So back in the day when I was very young, I was probably about 7 years old. I started drawing birds,
Okay.
and I did watercolor paintings of birds. So I wanted to be able to take reference photos of these birds so I could paint them and enter them into art contests. Because when you paint a bird from a photo, you have to get permission from the artist before you can put it in a contest. And I
Hmm.
wanted to be able to take my own original photos. So I spent an entire winter shoveling a lot of driveways, an entire spring mowing a lot of lawns and doing a lot of
Yeah.
yard work and other random things. Saved up $200, went to Walmart and bought the biggest looking camera I could get for $200, which I think
Okay.
it came out to be like $212. It was
Yeah.
like this small point and shoot Fujifilm S1000,
Okay. Yeah.
and it was like pretty grungy as a camera. Like it was, nothing fancy. But I started using that. I started taking pictures of birds and wildlife, and eventually started making videos with it too. And I actually made this music video a long time ago to a popular Christian artist song
Okay.
when I was young. We were
Yeah.
very homeschooled,
Yeah.
and
What was the song?
we filmed it in our basement
Yeah.
and did some like effects where we were flicking lights on and off, and there were some match cuts and like special transitions in there. And I wasn't even really doing filmmaking at that point. I was just doing
Okay.
that for fun.
Yeah.
And we made that. I synced up all the action to the audio, and then asked my brother to put it out on Facebook because I was too young to even have
Okay.
a Facebook at that point. So he published it on his Facebook,
Yeah.
and I guess I really liked that at the time,
Yeah.
and started seeing DSLRs coming out, which were like, fancier cameras that had lenses that were removable and changeable, and they took really pretty photos. And I wanted to be able to take photos with them. And then one came out, the Canon EOS T1i back in the day came out that actually started doing video, and it was pretty low quality video. It was like 720 HD. For
Okay.
anyone who's a
Yeah.
filmmaker who's watching this, you know what that means. Everyone else probably is like, eh.
Or if you're on
Uh,
YouTube, it's like it's not the high quality one.
right.
It's the middling one. Yeah.
It's like the middle one. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good description.
Yeah.
So my brother got one of those cameras that could do video and had the interchangeable lenses, and I started bugging him to borrow it and to use it, and he wouldn't let me touch it. So I saved up some more money and I bought it from him
Okay.
and started making my own films with that
Yeah.
and learning how to edit and just doing a lot of internet research. for very like complicated topics that I wanted to learn about, like how to work with raw video, how to work with log video, how to make your video look better, stuff like that. Um, all the things that a young filmmaker wants to know how to do, I was looking up online. I live and die by YouTube. I think YouTube is the best source of training, better than film school.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
and from that, I grew my skills, and my brother had been doing wedding photography for several years and started getting requests for wedding films.
Mm.
I tried to get him to hire me on to wedding films for a while, but I didn't have enough skill, wasn't like polished enough as a filmmaker. So I kept building that skill. And eventually in 2014, he hired me on my first wedding with
Okay.
him. And we filmed in Pennsylvania at this really nice big wedding venue. And I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And wanted to keep doing it. So we
Yeah.
did wedding films for a couple of years. It's kind of like the classic way to start out as a filmmaker right now, doing wedding
Right.
films.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Uh,
sorry,
And
what?
then it was like school right after that, right?
Um,
Or like shortly
yeah, I
after.
mean, there was, I did wedding films. I started entering film contests with small little pieces that weren't
Mm.
very good,
Yeah.
and just kept making films. And when it came time to decide what to do for college, I had several different options that I could have turned into a career. I could have done
Uh,
something with environmental science. I could have done something with music, or I could have done something with like film and photography.
right.
So I decided New York would be a great option because I could get at least two of those things really well in
Yeah.
New York, the
Yeah.
music and the filmmaking. And I went to the King's College, where we both went,
Yeah.
and started really tapping into the film scene there and going to free events and talking to
Okay.
people, meeting up, learning as much as I could, and
Yeah.
continuing to make films and just, yeah,
Awesome. Yeah.
growing in New
Awesome.
York, which
Awesome.
led to eventually in 2018, in early 2018, my older brother and I started talking seriously about starting a film production company.
Right. And
So
that's
we
Cursive Films,
That's
right?
Cursive, right?
So yeah, before we get there, then I'd love to kind of just backtrack a little bit. So came to NYC, so you were thinking like again the film, environmental science, these
Mm.
different pathways, and so you came here, went to the King's College, which yeah, plug, go there. Um, but so curious, like how did you first find out about these free events in NYC though? Like where did you go to learn about them? Was it just at the school? I know that you turned me on to various Facebook groups and everything. Were you onto that at that point? Did you have like a mentor of some sort? How did you like start navigating the NYC scene when you first came in?
Right. I would say I just had a host of mentors. I talked to a lot of people. I messaged a lot of people on Instagram,
Yeah.
slid into their DMs, and just tried to get to meet people and learn more about what was going on in the film scene, because I feel like
Mhm.
that's one of the best ways to learn, is just to meet the people who are doing things and talk to them and go to the events that they're hosting or going to.
Right.
So like big industry events like the NAB show, which takes place in Las Vegas in April every year, but also they have a smaller version, NAB New York.
Right.
So I went there. I met people through that. Um, I just like some of my like big camera brands like Red hosts a lot of events at their space. So if you follow on
Mhm.
along on their event pages and subscribe to their emails, they'll send out stuff that
Right.
they're doing. So yeah, it's just kind of stuff like that.
Okay. So then for like filmmakers out there who are listening, watching, so it's just kind of literally like kind of the people that you see or the materials you see people using, that equipment and everything,
Hmm.
going like kind of straight to the source and seeing what
Right.
content they put out.
Hmm.
Okay.
Just track with industry news and follow the people who are doing the work, and sign up for email lists. It's like the
Yeah.
best
Yeah.
way to get in the know about what's going on if you're in a
Yeah.
city.
Okay.
If you're elsewhere, it might be a little bit different, but
Yeah.
yeah.
And then I know, like you know, that the King's College is not like the biggest film school in the world by any means. But you mentioned earlier that you believe YouTube is better than film school. So curious
Hmm.
then, between like YouTube uh, and like this is kind of the in-person experience you were starting to get um, in NYC.
Mm.
How did you kind of balance the two while going to school, and what was the decision then to like stay at school, or were you
Mm.
thinking at that time that film school was better?
Sorry, could you rephrase that real quick?
Yeah. So basically, how did you balance learning film outside of school with
Mm.
your regular school coursework?
It's a lot
Um,
of work.
yeah, and then kind of in addition to that, uh, what is it that led you to come to school um, in the first place, or had you not at that point believed that YouTube was better than film school?
Um, I would say I've always believed that YouTube is better than film school
Mhm.
because you can learn the hard skills of filmmaking on there.
Right.
Um, like you can learn about shutter speed and exposure and audio and basically anything you want on YouTube. You can also learn about how a film set works on YouTube, film rolls on YouTube, and you don't need film school to do that. The reason I went to school was essentially to fill in the gaps in my learning that I couldn't fill on YouTube
Okay.
and also networking. The thing about
Gotcha.
going to a film school is you have a built-in community of filmmakers, so it's great in that respect. But at the same time, you are in the most saturated market as a
Yeah.
filmmaker. You're
Yeah.
competing against the same people for the same work all the time.
Yeah. Especially here in New
So
York too. Like
right,
there's so much
right,
even
especially.
outside of the school. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay.
So for me, school was more about learning business and communication skills
Right.
and filling in gaps in my education and just growing personally instead of learning film skills because I really believed that film skills could be learned on YouTube and the internet
Yeah. Yeah.
better, faster, like much more efficiently
Mhm.
than at film school.
Okay. Gotcha.
Not
Yeah.
to like bash people who have gone to film school. I think film
Right.
school
Right.
is also a great route. Just for
Yeah.
me personally, where I was, that's what I decided.
No. Yeah. And it's also the less expensive route. So I
Mm,
know that, especially
that's
in today's
true.
day and age, that's a big factor.
Instead of
Um,
paying for school, you get to pay for camera gear that you
Hey,
own.
there you go. Yeah, you own the camera gear, and
Hmm.
then you're able to, yeah, kind of get that firsthand experience which you got. It's kind of yeah dives into the other part then. So balancing film and school, because like especially like when I came in, it was your sophomore year, my freshman year, and you just like kept going, kept growing, kept expanding, and doing more and more outside of school
Mm,
with different projects, at times having to take time off of school to do these other projects, at times having to say no to projects because of school. So
mm,
kind of how did you balance the two? Because
mm,
I think you did so very well. So
hmm. I think it's definitely it's a tricky balance trying to, and honestly, you could ask the same question of anyone who's done some kind of internship or run their own small business while in school or had any sort of substantial side hustle. If you do anything that's not school while in school, it's going to be tough
yeah,
because you've got homework and professors and class time fighting for your attention. And then you also want to give your attention to this other thing. So it's just
right,
finding the balance between those two. Reconciling it with your schedule
yeah,
and kind of just making it work, you know? That's
yeah,
it.
yeah. Okay, yeah, and yeah, yeah, you're right that like it is like a lot of people do have to balance something else with school, but like film especially like those are
Mm,
12, sometimes 16-hour days as well. So that's
yeah.
yeah, more power to you.
The amount of actual 12-hour days and like full days that I did while I was in college was actually fairly minimal.
Okay.
Thankfully, a lot of the stuff I
Yeah.
got to do was smaller and only took
Right.
partial days. But for those 12-hour days, the thing that I found was a lot of film shoots still take place on Saturdays
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
the weekends. So I could fill that up, just catch up
Yeah.
on my homework
Yeah.
and sleep
Yeah.
later.
Hey.
Um, yeah.
There you go. Yeah. And so then it was just again kind of going back to just finding out about these groups and everything and like
Mm,
just reaching out to people and that's how you kind of got on set as well.
hmm Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. Awesome. So then how did like you're in school and I kind of got to witness this a little bit firsthand, but for those who are listening now, uh how did Cursive Films come about? Like what made you and your brother decide to launch that business? Because you still like you were in school still, like you were like a junior in school, and I'm seeing you like start to take down these notes and everything, like work at nights, all of this stuff,
Mm,
to launch a production company. So
mm. Yeah. I mean, we've done weddings since I was in high school,
yeah,
and we actually did it. Me, him, my brother Mike, and my brother Ben would often do weddings together. Ben was usually sound, and then Mike and I would be camera
okay,
people.
yeah,
And we always joked about making a production company someday, like the Robros, the Rothermel brothers.
yeah,
And it was always just kind of like this joke and like pipe dream that we had that we always thought would be fun. But then Mike graduated, he settled into a normal job, got married, and it wasn't until I was in college and started toying with the idea a little bit more. I actually talked with another friend at school about possibly starting a production company, and I was like, "Hey, this would be super fun. Like, we should do it."
yeah,
Um, and that was kind of the point where I decided I really wanted to start a production company and run it with someone else. So I started talking with my brother about it a little more seriously and was like, what would this look like? Like, we are already doing this work. We are already producing films. Why don't we formalize it in a production company instead of
right,
just being freelancers? So that's kind of how it came about.
okay. So you guys were kind of
Yeah.
already doing the work then, so it's
Mm-hmm.
mainly just
Right.
fundraising of that so for you to continue doing
Right.
what you're doing.
Making more work for ourselves so that we
Okay.
can do more work.
Yeah, I mean, hey, there you go though. And like it's like you're able to grow that more too, and kind of take yeah, you have more of an equity. So
Yeah,
that's
definitely. And
yeah,
you're building a brand
yeah,
that is something beyond yourselves, which is pretty
right,
cool.
right. And so kind of diving a little bit deeper into that, um, a lot of people want to start companies, whether it's a production company, whether it's an e-commerce business, whatever it is. A lot of people want to start the business, but
Mm,
few actually fail to do so.
mm,
And then fewer actually find success, especially in the early years.
mm.
You've done both. And so with that, curious, like how did you find the courage to launch in the first place, like take that leap of faith, especially with so much uncertainty? Because it was like you were about to,
Mm,
like you were closing in on your graduation and everything.
mm,
And
mhm,
with this business comes a lot of freedom, but also a lot of
mm,
responsibility. Like it's not
mm,
like you're the guy, so you gotta
mm.
be able to create. So how did you find that courage to launch? And then like what are the things you learned? And I know you're still early in the process, but
Mm.
so far like you guys are still alive. I count that as a success. So
Yeah. Um, I think a bit of it is it just takes a sort of recklessness to start a business.
mhm.
I heard someone say recently that if someone had told them how hard running a business would be, they would never start it in the first place. Like if they could
Okay,
truly
yeah,
communicate
yeah,
that, it takes a little bit of like, yeah, just recklessness and ignorance in a way to start a business because you
mhm.
have to be willing to like jump off a cliff, sort of.
Right,
Um,
right,
because the thing is, when you start a business, like finances will be tough from month to month at the beginning, and stuff will be hard because no one will know who you are or what you do, and or be willing to pay you any money. So
yeah,
it's like you have to be a little bit crazy to start a business, and I think it was a smooth transition only because I was already doing it. And if I had just like up and one day decided to start a filmmaking business, I think that would have been crazy, but not in a good way.
right,
But the way that we started it it was a pretty good transition. My brother was still in his job. He was able to do that in addition to running the film production company. And I was still in school. So we had like a
Yeah.
good buffer for when we started.
Right, right.
And it wasn't like we had to pay for food, housing, transportation from this business immediately. Um,
Right.
like we had other things going at the same time. So
Yeah.
it was a auspicious time to start.
Yeah.
I'll say that. Yeah.
That's a good word. That's a very good
Mm,
word. So I'm
auspicious
assuming that
timing.
so is that the way that you'd recommend to most people, regardless of industry, just in terms of not putting all your eggs in that basket per se,
Mm,
but also having something else, whether it's school, whether it's that other job, but like working on it
mm,
like as a side hustle to start?
mm, hmm I was talking with a CEO of a marketing agency recently,
Mhm.
and I asked him what it was like when he was starting out with the company because they're still a fairly young company, and he has been there since the beginning. He quit his job as a statistician, like a really well-paid job in
Right.
Washington, D.C., to move out and start this new company.
Mm.
I asked him, like, how do you do that? Like, what was it like starting that? And he said just how it was really tough. He became one of the first Uber drivers in his area just to like make ends meet. And
Yeah.
the advice that he gave me was keep your burn rate super low when you're starting
Okay.
a company, as low as you can.
Yeah.
Um,
And for those listening who don't know, can you explain what a burn rate is?
that's how fast you're spending money.
Okay.
So get a cheap apartment within your means that's still livable, you know,
Yeah.
and other ways like eat less food. Don't do that,
Yeah.
actually. You know, whatever
Yeah.
you can do to slow the expenditures so that you don't ever hit a point where you are completely desperate for cash. Like if you're going into debt to run your business on a regular basis, that's a bad sign.
Gotcha.
That was kind of the baseline that we set with our business. Like we can't go into debt
Mhm.
to create this business. So if we ever start getting to that point, that's the point at which we know we need to either rethink this or like backtrack or quit.
Gotcha.
Because so far it's been like we've been blessed enough to have gotten enough business to keep the lights on and
Yeah.
continue to survive even through the first year. I mean, with the COVID-19, it's going to be an interesting test now to
Yeah.
see how we
Yeah.
come out on the other side of this. But yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. COVID has kind of changed everything for everybody.
yeah.
Um,
You have to
so
know, I think starting a business, you have to know or be prepared to fail. You have to
mm,
know how to fail and then know
okay.
when you're failing so that you can stop failing.
That's a really
Because
good way to put it.
sometimes people start failing and they don't stop and they don't get out.
Right.
Um, and yeah, that's not very good either.
Yeah. Sometimes you gotta cut your losses. Not everything can
Right.
be turned around. No,
Mm-hmm.
that's a really, really good point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wow. So kind of going into COVID a little bit. Don't want to talk about it, like the issue and everything, like it's
Uh-huh.
here, it's something we have to go through, but uh like whether it's COVID or a death in the family or whatever else, there are going to be hiccups in life, sometimes prolonged hiccups. And so curious what you would recommend to people for like just what are the keys to improving your craft during times like these, whether it's
Mm.
filmmaking or whatever else. Like like, what are like the principles that you would recommend?
Mm. I'm going to apply this specifically to COVID-19 since it's the
Mhm.
situation that we're in, and
Yeah,
people aren't going to forget this anytime soon.
that's true.
Um, what we're doing right now is we're using this primarily as a building period. That's kind of what we're seeing it as because we are still young as a company. We still have a little bit of buffer. We're not super huge. We thankfully don't have like a company building that we have to pay a lease on
Right,
or a lot
right.
of like liabilities in that respect. We have assets that we own, like cameras and lighting and microphones that we can use. So this is really a time to take advantage of those things that we already have and minimize what we're losing in terms of lost
Right.
work.
Yeah.
Um, and also a great time to do education because like once we come out of this, hopefully we're going to get back to normal work and we're going to be on set 12 hours a day again and, doing a lot of emails and stuff.
Yeah.
So now we have all this free time to learn and to build new things. And I think that's the best thing to do when you go through downtime,
Yeah.
because a lot of people, when they hit downtime, they flounder, they watch Netflix, they just sit
Yeah.
on the couch and are like, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
I've seen like these memes on Instagram of like a person carrying, like there's this one of like a person carrying a coffee cup and they're
Uh-huh.
carrying it by the lid.
Okay.
And it says like me, and then like the lid is like popping off and the cup is falling down. And it's like my film production career. And it's like, that's what
Oh,
it feels like right now.
wow.
Cause
Wow.
like
Yeah.
you're holding on to the lid, but the cup
Yeah.
with all the coffee is falling out beneath it.
Yeah. I have not seen
Um,
that meme yet. Okay.
maybe we can insert it in
Yeah.
the video or something.
I'll see if I
um,
can figure that out. Yeah.
but stuff like that, like people just letting go, I
Yeah.
don't think that's a good response in a time like this. In a time like this, you need to step back. You need to think, okay, what processes can we refine? Is our brand as good as it can be? Is our website as good as it can be? Like one of the things that we're specifically working on is like contracts.
Right.
We're
Right.
building and solidifying and like something that has been good for us, but
Mhm.
can be better. And normally we wouldn't have the time to work on it. But right now
Right.
we have extra time. So we're really
Right.
putting time against making stuff better for the business. So
Gotcha.
that
No, that makes sense.
essentially like the idea of when you're running a business, you want to be able to make sure that you're viable before you go to scale, before you really grow.
Yeah.
So we're still small, like we want to scale. So we're essentially making sure that the pieces are in place to be ready to scale once all of this is over.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah.
No, that's a really good way of going about it. Possibly the only way. We'll see. But um,
Yeah.
so as we're running low on time here, just have a couple quick questions for you. So first off,
Hmm.
what would you say is your biggest obstacle to date, and how did you overcome it?
Biggest obstacle to date. Whew. This is like interview questions.
That's what this is. Trying.
I did not come prepared for this one. Biggest
Okay.
obstacle to date. I think the biggest obstacle that we face all the time is getting work as a film production company, because it is a pretty saturated market. It's not
Yeah,
overly
for sure.
saturated, but it's a pretty saturated market. It's hard to make it as an artist of any kind. So you really need to have a combination of good artistic skills and also like business skills that
Right.
you bring
Right.
together and just push forward.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, that's one of the biggest things I went to college for, was to get those business skills so that we could
Yeah.
serve clients better and
Yeah.
get more clients because of that.
Yeah. Awesome. And then
Mm.
kind of the polar opposite almost. What's the biggest triumph you've experienced, and how did you keep going off of that? Because I know a lot of times
Mm.
people may either get like caught up in that one triumph
Hmm.
and be too scared to do anything else, feeling like a
Hmm.
drop off, or just like too caught up in it that they don't necessarily
Mm.
uh, like that they just kind of expect everything to be like that when
Mm.
it might not. And I know you've had like amazing experiences like working with Andy
Mm.
Mineo, for example. So like
Mm.
just kind of curious what that is for you or was for
Yeah.
you.
I would say the biggest triumph we've had as a company, and for me personally probably, was going to Uganda, Malawi to film with
Okay.
Bloodwater Mission.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we had this like they came to us because Mike had a connection in the nonprofit world to them, and basically said like, we're looking for a video production company to do this project, and they were
Mhm.
looking around at a couple different people, and they asked us to pitch a budget. We did kind of like essentially an interview with them. We talked to them about their vision and our vision, and it was the biggest budget that we'd ever pitched anyone that we pitched to them.
Okay, wow.
And
Yeah.
we were kind of anxious about like, we're probably not going to get this job because it's like
Yeah.
so beyond all the other budgets that we have ever worked with before. And we ended up getting the job, which was amazing. And we were like floored
Okay.
because it was kind of one of those like, this is going to like make or break your business, which
Mhm.
I don't feel like you should have too many deals that are make or break your business.
Right,
But
right,
for us, that's what it felt like at the time.
right.
And we ended up planning for months. And then while I was in school during my last semester, I think it was, yeah, last semester of school, I went out to Africa, to Uganda, Malawi for 2 weeks and
Yeah.
flew around there and made films with incredible African partners over there for Blood Water Mission. And it was like the culmination of everything that we've been working towards as a film production company. And we felt like we were really doing it, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
That was it right there.
Yeah.
And how we have continued to follow up on that is just like getting that material out into the world, creating as much as we can with it, creating good quality content with it for our client and for us as a business. And then like recently, one of the things that we did was when COVID-19 happened, they put out a page about their response to COVID-19 and their partner's response to COVID-19. And we made them a short video using some of the footage and some motion graphics that
Yeah.
they could put on there, just like
Oh, wow.
as a
Yeah.
good way to serve the client and maintain the relationship and provide some good for the world, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Sorry, my voice is getting a little froggy.
No, it's all good. All good. We're about at the end of the interview. So last kind of formal question before I dive into a personal question, is, and there goes my monocle again. Um, but uh, what are you doing next, and where can people find you?
What are we doing next? We were actually, just before I got on this video call, we are talking about doing a podcast.
Okay.
We're talking about doing like a video podcast where we talk with other filmmakers and talk between ourselves
Yeah.
about the kind of unanswered questions for people who start small video production companies.
Yeah.
Like, how do you get insurance? How do you fill out your
Yeah.
tax situation? Like stuff like
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
just like practical. And like, how do you go from being a gearhead to an actual storyteller?
Right.
Beyond that, like one of my big goals for this year is to try to sell a TV show.
Okay.
Still working on that. I had one pitch meeting so far with a TV show. It went pretty well, but COVID-19 has kind of put a damper on everything. So
Yeah. Yeah. Can't
everything's
really plan for that.
slowed a little bit.
Yeah.
Beyond that, we're just trying to grow the business as best we can and work
Okay.
with great people.
Awesome. Yeah. And where can people find you on social media so like they can like log on or like watch this podcast, listen to this podcast if and when it does come out.
Yeah, we're on Instagram as Cursive Films, on Facebook as Cursive Films. You can find us on our website at www.cursivefilms.com.
Yeah.
What else do we have? We don't have a Twitter. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's where you can find us online.
Sounds great. Yeah. You said sorry almost like a Canadian right there. Just want to point
Sorry.
that out.
I was watching a Canadian for several weeks, and I think I picked it up from him.
Yeah.
I almost started saying this guy named Patrick Moreau, who does Muse storytelling.
Yeah.
He did this online course, and
Okay.
he's very excited about storytelling, and he has a like Canadian accent. So I started picking up a few things after watching several hours of that.
That'll do it. That'll do
Yeah.
it. All right. All right. Yeah. I'm from Minnesota, and people try to say I have a Canadian accent. I go against that with all my might. But all that being said, thank you for a wonderful interview. Just have one kind of last thing. This is the personal part of the interview now. Like that part was for
the part where I get exposed.
I don't know. Our former mutual roommate, Jackson Kane, might be upset at me for this one, but just kind of curious. Like, so how big of a Philadelphia sports fan are you?
I'm not actually.
Okay, so
which might be a controversial take in our room.
Yeah.
but my grandfather was from Pittsburgh, so I've
Okay.
been more of a Pittsburgh sports fan, although
Okay.
nominally I don't actually really follow sports, but
Gotcha.
Pittsburgh
So,
Steelers and Pittsburgh Pirates over
okay.
the
Okay.
Philly Eagles, and yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So then I'll take what I can get then. Like the grandfather seems like a very strong tie.
hmm
So I won't
My
even go
family
with
is
the
more Pittsburgh.
Steelers. I won't even go with the Steelers then. Like you guys have won you've won a lot of Super Bowls. I think you guys have six. And so
Honestly, I don't know.
all good. So, but Pittsburgh does not have an NBA team.
They
That
don't?
said, no, they don't.
Oh, shoot.
Philadelphia does, but not Pittsburgh.
Hmm.
So that said, I
Well,
would I would formally like to invite you to join the Minnesota Timberwolves fandom. And I'm trying to get
Minnesota.
Minnesota.
I
Minnesota.
The last
Minnesota.
time I was in Minnesota was 2 years ago. That was my only time in Minnesota ever, and I just drove through it.
You know, it's all good. It's all good. Like you can just root for Minnesota teams. I'm trying
I
to
gotta
get
come
every
visit your
person.
house in Minnesota
You
at
do.
some
You
point.
do. Yes. Yes. I will. I'll go. Like Timberwolves haven't really won, but the Lynx have some championships. The WNBA teams take you there. But like I'm trying to convince every
I
person who
feel like
comes
I'd
on
probably
this
be
show.
closest to the Brooklyn Nets,
Ah.
just because I've been to one of their games. They're literally the only basketball game I've ever been to.
We can change that. Come to me. Well, I'll take you to a Timberwolves game. I'm trying to
Okay,
convince
I'll take you
every
up on that.
person. Awesome.
You're paying for tickets, right? And
Yes, I'll
concessions.
figure it.
Actually, you pay for tickets, I'll get concessions.
All right, done. We'll
Done.
get it done. I'm trying to convince every person who comes on the show to become a Minnesota fan because we
And
need
this is the
more.
section where JP convinces you to become a Timberwolves fan.
Yes, Timberwolves, Vikings, Gophers. I'm not really into baseball as much, but Twins, NHL, I don't really care about, but I'll root for the Wild. Go
All
Minnesota.
right, all right.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to that Timberwolves game once this COVID madness is done. But yeah, thank
Someday.
you again for this amazing interview. I really appreciate you coming
Mm,
on. I'm looking forward to seeing all that you continue doing, that you go on to do in like the 5, 10, 15 years from now. So yeah, thank
yeah.
you for this. And to the listeners, the watchers on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you may be, thank you for tuning in. We'll be back with more 20 to 30-ish minute videos featuring young and rising professionals, kind of just charting their trajectory, their experiences in their respective industries. We'll be back with those soon. So take care. 2 fingers. Have a good one. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons down below. Also, feel free to check us out online at youngandrising.com, where we have advice and guidance for young professionals by young professionals. And most importantly of all, go Minnesota.